does come down to you. We've talked about, all the different strategies, and we talk about, and this is what part of what I was saying, that you do have the ability to then be like, okay, so which one do I do? Do I do this? Should I do flipping? Should I go into investment? Should I do a joint venture? So what happens is the roadmap is designed to help you to have an idea of where you are and what strategies will work within the space in which you're in. So like I've talked about the cash acquisition. So at the beginning of your journey, most people are in the cash acquisition stage. They need cash, they need to build income, they need strategies that work on that stage. And then eventually you build up cash through whatever strategy, either through, say, the rent-to-rent strategies I was talking about. And you remember I told you sometimes it can take up to, say, 2 years for you to steadily build up that income. Imagine if you had a business that was generating £1,000, you then got another a property that's generating, say, net of £1,000. You got another property. So you're able to save £2,000 every month. It means at the end of 2 years, you have £50,000. That is good starting pot money, right? So remember, I've assumed you have a full-time job. So you're not touching this money, you're just saving it. So this is how you would start off with a cash strategy that then built up over time to be able to then move you into the portfolio building strategy, where you would then be up in the space where you're now trying to get the cash that you've built up over, say, the first 2 years. You can then use that to buy a property. Now, of course, like I said, you just have to be savvy in terms of the location, because 50K can get you just so far in London if you're based in London. But if you move further to some other cities, then 50K can get you a house, i.e., I mean, if you get it leveraged, right? So in the portfolio building stage, you're very much about, I'm going to go into these, so I don't want to spend too much time on this slide. But in the portfolio building stage, you're very much about trying to figure out what areas work for you. What's your goldmine area? What area, like for me, Northwest London, I understand it backwards. I know streets, I know areas, so I can invest in that area very easily. Now, take me and dump me in Liverpool, then it becomes a different, story completely. So understand that as seasoned as I am, I won't just go into a new area until I fully assess that area and fully understood the nuances that area represents and the strategies that will work in that area. So just understand that portfolio building, that's what you'll be doing. You're experimenting with areas, you'll invest in a property, it might work out, the strategy may not work out. For me, HMOs don't work for me. It's just not my thing. But, I can understand why people build up huge portfolios of HMOs over time. It has its challenges and it has to be suitable. It has to be suited to you, right? So you'll assess the strategies, but some people that run HMOs will never touch service accommodation because they don't like the stress that service accommodation involves, right? So everybody will have their own businesses and their own appetite for whatever negative attributes that business has, because most businesses do. Okay, so you're in portfolio building, and then you then go into the growth stage. And this is pretty much where you now know what strategies work and you're focused on those strategies only, and I'll talk about that. So the first three I'll talk in detail about. Asset preservation, this is pretty much where, you've built up your asset portfolio, and, we're looking long range, because if you're on this call, then we're all hoping at some point that you get to the point where you're at asset preservation, you have enough of a portfolio, you're now thinking of strategies around keeping your portfolio, keeping the value within your portfolio. Is it that you reassess the properties to see, okay, which ones can we increase, which ones can we add value? There's some properties that I buy today that I know that I'm not trying to maximize the value of those properties now. I know that in maybe 5-10 years, when it's time to refurbish, then I'll add some more money, maybe do a side extension, because it has potential to do that. So asset preservation, you're really thinking about your asset portfolio and protecting it from, tax exposure. You have some more complex things to deal with at that stage, which you want to be preparing for from now. But really, asset preservation is all about keeping your portfolio and managing the exposure you have either to tax and to all the different issues, maintenance, all of those things that come with preserving your assets. And then, of course, we have succession or disposal, where you then come to the point where, am I going to pass this on to a relative, or am I going to sell it off? Because you have to, and some of those are cyclical, as in you may just jump over from portfolio building into, I'm going to sell off this property. I don't want this property in my portfolio. And then, so like I say, with these different phases, it gives you an idea of where you are, but there definitely overlaps, right? So in my case, I'm somewhere between portfolio building and growth. And not to say I don't still have cash acquisition strategies, but they're less so. I'm trying to build portfolio more, right? So some of the strategies that I would be involved in are more joint ventures and just trying to, because now I know the strategies that work for me and I'm quite happy with those strategies and I'll just double down on them. So let's go into, so your own strategy. Now let's deep dive a bit into some of these. So cash acquisition. So why I say cash acquisition is because a lot of them are aimed at building your cash reserves. To be fair, a lot of it is active strategies. They are strategies that are built around you needing to be involved in the business, because remember, you're building cash, right? So if you don't have cash, then it's time. It's usually time consuming to compensate for the fact that you don't have the cash to get started. If you do have cash, then you would be looking at, say, things like flipping. So where we say buy to sell, right? Where you can, it's still time consuming and still active because you have to always be looking for a new property. You have to always be looking for a new deal. You have to always be assessing deals to make money, right? So when I say active-based strategies, there are strategies that need you to constantly be on it for you to make money, as opposed to strategies that are that follow up, that are more passive, where you don't have to be involved in it or you're minimally involved in it. So management strategies, agent, interior design, refurbishment, all those other strategies I talked about earlier, those are the type of strategies that work well in building that cash for you. And then, how do you succeed in this stage, right? So like I said, there's a lot of trial and error, because you will first decide, okay, let me try as a service accommodation person. Then you run it for a bit and realize, this doesn't work for me. It's too time consuming. It's just not going to work, either because the margins just, whilst the margins may be there, I just can't commit enough to it. Or, the person I hired has completely messed me up on this, So there are different reasons why you decide a strategy is not going to work for you, right? So you're going to run through a few that you just naturally gravitate to, and then you'll find out over time which ones work. It's a good season because it's a creative state season. So at this point, you're open to ideas. You're likely to, say, partner up with people. You travel. I know people in this stage that will travel to 4 hours. They don't care. Time is not an issue. They'll travel 4 hours to go look at a deal, make sure it works before they take it on, right? So this stage, very flexible, networking is crucial. So at this stage, because part of networking, there are two things you want to achieve from your networking. First is that you want to be networking for information and for knowledge, but you also want to be networking also to build that sort of, you're building yourself as an industry expert in a sense, so that people then know over time that, oh, this is the person to go to if you want a HMO, or this is the person to go to if you're looking for service accommodation. This, because they can't just know you as a property person, right? If you are known as a property person, it becomes difficult to generate business. You need to be known for something so that people are coming to you. And different people may know you for different things. In my case, some people know me as Dolapo, the investor, so I bring funds to her for investment. Some people know me as Dolapo, the person who gets us service accommodation, right? So you can wear the different hats, but that's you building different sources of income in a sense. So networking, very crucial. Networking is really the bane of, it's also a bane, but it's also the crux of your business. If you don't network in this stage, it's going to be difficult to grow. So even if you have money, you still need to network to find the deals. If you're talking to agents, you have to get very comfortable with calling them constantly to have those conversations, to find out when a deal is coming up, find out if they have anything in the pipeline. You want to be having those conversations. And then, of course, gaining knowledge. That's one of the core attributes of the stage, is that you need to be gaining knowledge consistently, because you're building up. Say you understand one aspect of strategy, then you discover another aspect, then so you're constantly building knowledge. Cons of this is all the difficulties of this stage, is that it can be stressful. Fear of taking risks. I remember at the beginning, there's that fear to get into a project, because you're like, oh, my money, this is the money that you've built up over time or whatever, and then you're now saying you want to put it into one thing. What if it doesn't work? So that fear of taking risks does creep in, but over time you start to lose your threshold for taking risks starts to increase. Then of course there is the high quit rate. This is where you just get tired. You're just like, you know what, I don't need money that seriously, to be honest. So I can just live by my day job and, you know, I'll be okay. And you will get to that point where you assess yourself and be like, why am I doing all of this? And this is where you then have to go to your core reasons why you're actually doing all of this. And so we don't talk about this, knowing your whys. You know, if you're on social media, you'd have heard a lot about why, you know, knowing your whys. Why do you do these things? Is it for the love of your family? Is it because you want to be a successful property person? Do you understand? Like the different reasons why that motivates you. But that's when you'll have to lean into those motivations, because you will get that pushback. So, you know, low tolerance for different parts of the business will creep up in this stage as well, where you just feel like, you know what, I don't have this, right? But actually that's not true. You do. It's just that you have to persevere through it. So, and then no leverage, of course. This is one of the core aspects of this stage is, you know, at this point, you haven't proven success. So for instance, if you want to go into HMOs, there's a lot of lenders won't lend you money if you don't have a proven, if you're not a buy-to-let landlord, for instance, right? However, if you've run a HMO rent-to-rent business, then you can qualify. So it's just understanding that there are ways around working to get leverage, because leverage is the fundamental for property investing. Even if you have cash, I always say, no matter how risk averse you are, you should always leverage the cash, especially in the UK, where you have very cheap access to leverage, talking about 3-4% max to get money from the bank, 70% of the property value. You know, it's not rocket science, but leverage is like fire, which is, on the one hand, it's great for cooking, it's great for many things. On the other hand, it can burn you and really, really burn you. So you need to be very savvy when you're dealing with leverage, you know. And this is at different stages. Even at this stage now, when I'm taking on leverage, I need to be very clear as to how am I exiting? What is my exit scenario from taking on this risk, because it is definitely taking risks. And this is one of the things, is the fear of taking risks is one of the things that you'll need to overcome in this stage.